Forum Asset Management is the presenting sponsor of our innovation special, Can Canada Meet the Moment? Forum has been meeting the moment since 1996, when Richard Aboud founded the firm as a Toronto real estate brokerage. 30 years later, Forum's an alternative asset manager, investor, and developer with over $4 billion in assets under management, investing across real estate, private equity, and infrastructure. They've built Canada's largest student housing portfolio and a rapidly growing self-storage business. And Richard co-founded Shift Canada, bringing entrepreneurial risk-taking into Canadian classrooms and empowering young people to embrace failure in the pursuit of innovation. Learn more at forumam.com. That's FORUMAM.com. Hey everybody, welcome to a brand new episode of In the Money with Amber Canwar. All this month, we're doing things a little bit different. We're asking the key question facing this country: can Canada meet the moment? Why are we asking this question now? Well, in about a month's time, Canada will host its first ever Canada Investment Summit. This is being put on by the Prime Minister of Canada in conjunction with two of the largest pension funds in the country. And it's all meant to show off the country to international investors. But to do that, we have to take sort of an unvarnished assessment of Canada's weaknesses as well as strengths. And we've got a great lineup of guests this whole month to do that. And I'm getting a wonderful assist from Paige Ellis, who many of you know was my former colleague at BNN Bloomberg. And now you're an In the Money person. Can we call you that?
In the Money with Amber Canwar. This is Paige Ellis.
Featuring Paige Ellis. Yeah. I know, I'm still an egomaniac, so I'm going to put my name on it. No, but Paige is going to be leading this series, and you've done a wonderful set of interviews about this topic. And I think it's really the thing everybody in this country wants to know is, can we meet this moment?
Can we meet this moment? And you mentioned that really important conference that's happening in the fall. Really funny kind of maybe asterisk on it, or even a really an important note about it, is that there's almost a rival forum happening at the same time. The Canadian Venture Capital and Private Equity Association is throwing its own forum, which is designed to show off Canada, all the projects here. But then the key question becomes, what projects? It's been tough getting a lot of these projects even off the ground. So how do we marry these international investors to projects that we just can't even bring to life?
Yeah. Like, it's not going to be, at least it doesn't look like it right now. We're filming in August. It doesn't look like you can say, hey, come to room A and you can buy airports, railway, infrastructure pipe. We just don't have that yet. I think that's something that the Prime Minister and these pension funds want to be able to show. Eventually we're getting there, and we're getting there faster than we have. But you're right, this series is all about examining, why don't we have those projects ready to sell?
Right. And, there has been some really fascinating research on the subject of Canadian innovation. There was this one by a venture capital firm called Leaders Fund in Toronto. It really, the authors described it as they kind of had this nagging feeling that the Canadian startup pipeline was shrinking. So we're talking about big, maybe infrastructure projects, but even at the startup level, the data is really revealing. In 2014, the U.S. produced 11 times more what they call high potential startups than Canada. In 2024,
11 times.
By 2024, the U.S. was producing 45 times more high potential startups. And Canadian founders in the U.S., they found, are raising nearly twice the capital as their Canadian peers trying to raise within Canada's borders. So there's a big gap that's widening and widening. And we really wanted to get to the core of why and how we address that.
I think that's an important part of this series. I've been covering tech and Canadian tech for a very long time. And the conversation is always the same. We've got it. We've got everything that we need to make it big. And instead of capitalizing on that, the moment doesn't last for very long. And as you mentioned, these companies have no choice but to go to the US because that is where the capital is. And we don't do enough to foster them here, keep them here. And that requires money, but it also requires like kind of a favorable regulatory environment.
It does. And we talk about all of the reasons why this is happening in this series. We have a great lineup of guests that we're going to speak to. Myself and Amber actually are going to be talking to these guests.
Mostly Paige.
Mostly me, I suppose, but Amber certainly has a big role. So we're going to talk to Michelle Romano about some of the cultural and policy shifts that she'd like to see play out here. Laura McGee at Diversio has a very upbeat perspective that I found very refreshing. We're also speaking to Adam Waterous on natural resources, but we're going to kick it off with Jim Balsillie, who's the former co-CEO of BlackBerry, which obviously a fascinating story there. And one close to your heart.
It's such a heartbreaker because like people know I have this I love covering BlackBerry. It was the first, when I was a young cub journalist, this was the story. And I became obsessed with, the boom and the bust and then the rebuild period. And then Paige walks in and is like, oh, I just got an interview with Jim Balsillie. I'm like, oh, I really had to be happy for you. And I am happy for you. But I was like, oh. Okay. Anyway, it's a fabulous interview. I couldn't have done it better because I've watched a little bit about it. But he's very candid, both about what went wrong at BlackBerry, but about what this country needs to do. And that's really where he's devoting his time these days.
It is. He's invested in the US and Canada, all around the world, but where he's really focused a lot of his energy is helping to cultivate Canadian innovation. Now, you talked about kind of your competitive streak there. This girl's so competitive. I play mahjong with her. It's intense.
I've lost every time. By the way, the competitiveness isn't getting me anywhere.
Well, let's see how far it gets you here. I have devised a little game. So I'm gonna come up with some innovations, some ideas or concepts or products, and you're gonna tell me if it was developed in Canada or elsewhere. So I'm calling it A or nay.
Oh, I love that. Cute. Okay, all right. So A if it's Canadian.
Yes.
Okay.
Velcro.
A?
No.
Okay.
It's Swiss. Invented in Switzerland.
Okay, how am I supposed to know that?
I don't know.
Okay.
This is just some fun trivia for you.
Switzerland. All right.
The Wonder Bra.
Ooh, nay.
This is a bit of a trick one. The original trademark for Wonder Bra is American.
Okay.
But it was actually, the product itself was developed in Montreal. So it's kind of a...
Okay, that's like the tale of what's going on wrong with tech right now.
Exactly. I'm going to throw one more at you. The smart thermostat.
A.
So yes, it was developed here?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I think it's called the Ecobee or the Ecobee.
Yes, yeah.
Is a Canadian company. But I think Nest has kind of eaten that lunch.
And Nest is not Canadian.
American. And that gets to kind of the key thing here. We come up with these great ideas. We're not always able to scale it to the degree that other markets are.
And I'm sure you've talked about that with Jim in this kickoff.
Absolutely. So with that said, let's get into it.
Thank you to our partners at ATB Financial. With over $100 billion in assets, ATB Financial is powering possibilities for more than 843,000 financial services clients. ATB Cormark Capital Markets is a leading North American investment firm providing holistic corporate and capital markets advice and full-service financial solutions. Visit atb.com/inthemoney for more information. The content provided in this podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute financial, investment, or professional advice. The views expressed by the host and the guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of any organization or company. The host and guests may maintain positions in any securities discussed on the podcast. Always consult with a qualified financial advisor or professional before making any investment decisions.
Jim, thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure to be with you, Paige.
I want to do something that you're not supposed to do in interviews, which is to talk about myself for a moment.
Sure.
I did my
Enough about you, what about me?
Right. So I did my undergraduate degree at Wilfrid Laurier University in the early aughts, so like 05 to 09.
All right.
And the research and motion co-op positions were the most coveted on campus.
Yeah.
Same with the University of Waterloo.
Yeah.
And your company distributed phones to those co-op students that had a roller ball that changed color.
Yeah.
That little roller ball.
Yeah, the Pearl.
All of us, Gen Pop had the Pearl that did not change color. And you guys essentially created this stratification system on campus based on what color your Pearl or your roller ball was. Are you aware that you guys did that?
No, but it's a great story. Yeah. It's a great story. We're status seekers so much of the time.
I think anyone who didn't live through that moment or, in the late 90s might be forgiven for not appreciating how revolutionary the smartphone was that the Research in Motion then, BlackBerry later created. Did you guys know what kind of, world-shaping product you had? Or is it only in hindsight that you can really appreciate that?
No, it's a big deal. But the key is you don't look down. You just you've got so much inbound to navigate that you're just navigating the inbound of very near term, medium term strategic stuff that you don't really have a time to think about its scope and consequences, but you're aware of it for sure.
Mm-hmm. You did your MBA at Harvard, I believe.
Yeah.
Right. When you graduated and you set your sights on, the different prospects in front of you, what did you make of, building a business in Waterloo, Ontario? And were there any misgivings among your peer group at the time?
Yeah, I was an odd man in it. I had my good friend, we did a second year study together, and we were the two that wanted to do entrepreneurship. He was Len Blavatnik. He's the guy that did the Russian oil and then bought the Warner Musics and stuff like that. And so, yeah, he went off to Russia to privatize tractors, and I went to Waterloo to do tech. Yeah, it was unconventional, but most of my courses were unconventional. I did stuff like Shoshana Zuboff was a prof of mine, and Jack Gabaro, Power and Influence, RAFA, competitive decision making. So I was trying to get a different lens into it rather than a deep functional structure. And I realized that I have to get into an operating role. And so I got myself into an operating role, and it's either, can I do this or not? I mean, if you want to play sports, you got to give me the ball and give me a chance to shoot. I don't know if I can score, and I got to develop that confidence, and it worked quick. And so, yeah, I didn't regret it, but it was considered, because it's not glorious. People are talking about multi-billion-dollar reorganizations with consulting firms or billion-dollar this, and you've got a $5,000 purchase order you've navigated. But as I said, the difference between a $5,000 purchase order and a $5 million purchase order is 3 zeros.
Right.
If you can get it, you can get it.
Yeah.
And so I got that, and I knew I needed to get that, and then away you go.
And Silicon Valley wasn't huge at the time, certainly not what it has become, right?
No. I mean, Gates was big then as the first under 30 billionaire, and he'd come to campus, and you had Silicon Graphics and Sun Microsystems, bit of Apple before they hit, they had a reimagination. So yeah, it was kind of pre that. Everything was, investment banking, venture capital, consulting, mainly that kind of stuff. Entrepreneurship in tech was, this was the late 90s. It was way not there yet.
Right.
Yeah, it was quite unconventional. But that was my application to Harvard. I wanted to be a tech entrepreneur. So I'd done that before, and that's what I wanted to do. Or that I'd worked in that area before.
I found it really interesting. I was reviewing a lot of interviews you've done over the years, and you had this one comment in an interview. Pardon me, it escapes me which interview it was, but you were talking about how when you had the pilot for the BlackBerry, you had investors, kind of potential investors lined up on Bay Street and potential investors lined up in the US. And the Bay Street investors were quite dismissive.
Yeah.
Whereas the Americans were stoked. They were quite excited about this product that you had. Can you tell me more about that experience, and if you think it's changed?
Well, Bay Street's very good at bullying, and whereas US wants a piece of you. So they say, okay, I got to get a piece of you and then 10x you, as opposed to holding you down. So, some people call it tall poppy and all that. Yeah, but once we got the US embracing of us, they just let's go. Here's jet fuel. What do you need? Let's go. Their attitude is they want to get rich, but they realize the way to get rich is to get a piece of you and 10x you. And that's very liberating. And it gives you confidence because you got resources and you're getting sales and you're getting engagement. So
And Canadian investors just don't have that mentality.
There were some good people, but it's really a suppression structure. Then there's differences now, but it made me realize that you've got to be formidable in protecting the organization because not everybody wishes you the best, and that's fine. I'm a very protective person. I protect things I care about, and I size things up pretty well. I call them as I see them, and if you're to some degree menacing for the organization, I deal with you accordingly. But if you're saying you want jet fuel and let's 10x it, then I deal with that accordingly too. And so but I had fairly benign views. The co-lead on our IPO put a hold analyst report on us 3 weeks after our IPO with no material events. Yeah, which is just basically to knock us down for putting them at the right-hand side, not on the left-hand side to run the books. Yeah, it was a way of saying, we're boss hog here. And so, and many other things like that. But that's okay. That's fine. You know who they are and you know what you're dealing with, and you govern accordingly.
And I think this kind of gets to the core of our conversation. And this is a big question, but I just want to throw this out there. If you were, go back to 25-year-old Jim, you had a big idea, would you still set up your business here in Canada, or would you domicile it elsewhere?
Well, we hugely benefited from being in Waterloo because back then we found an organization. I just signed the incorporation papers for an organization that was a lobby for our companies. And we called that organization locally Communitech. And it changed to these incubator things later, which have had complex experiences. But fundamentally, we were trying to say your bread is buttered on the success of your companies. And Jean Chrétien and Paul Martin really embraced it. Everybody loved it. Like, go, 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 let's go Canadian. So, and then we got the good co-ops, and you talked about the excitement of the Laurier and Waterloo and all that stuff. So yeah, it was really, let's go. We're a team Canada, get purchase orders. And something changed where it became about hands-off government when everyone was getting hands-on, or even worse, a long era of sucking up to Silicon Valley and giving our best ideas and encouraging them to come and set up their branch plants here and hiring our best people and coming into incubators, which was self-subversion. So no, I think that was a very good era to start and grow a company in Canada. But since that, public policy has substantially put wind in the face of our entrepreneurs. And that's why you see these weakening economic outcomes. And then when they're weak, the policymakers claim they got the policies perfect, so it must be a complacent culture. They're either gaslighting or they don't understand how much subversion they do.
I want to dive into that policy for sure. I first want to ask you though, I received all these decks from your team. They were very helpful. You have a great team. Honestly, these decks don't paint a pretty picture of what's happening in Canada in terms of innovation and entrepreneurship. There's this one chart that shows that homegrown startups are declining at a really rapid pace. Do you put that entirely at the feet of policy, or what are the other factors?
100% policy.
100% policy.
If it could be higher than 100%, I would make it 100%.
What about access to capital here?
Yeah, but that's a policy thing. Capital, I raised almost $1 billion in 1 week for RIM in like 2001. There's lots of capital out there. It goes to good business plans. So it doesn't matter where you get your capital. The issue is, do you have an interesting business plan? And what's happened in the world, it was then, but it is now, these are public-private structures. A lot, if you look at, I categorize this in some of my presentations. I give 10 very concrete examples of hyper-aggressive U.S. economic statecraft in the last year. And so none of this is hands-off. And what do we get? We do this capital gains thing, which drives people away. You give research money to foreign firms. The procurement is then, and so people get the memo that, okay, fine, I'm going to go, and people need to make rational decisions wherever their best prospects are, they go. So why do they locate if money can move across the border seamlessly, why did they say, I'm going to pick up my company and move it across the border to Michigan or New York? Because the environment is much more favorable, and companies, technology, and money can move.
Is that where you're largely seeing the companies, pull up stakes and put them back down, is in the US?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Take me behind the scenes. Is there you don't have to name names, but a conversation you've had with someone recently where they've talked to you through this calculus? I think it's a good idea to move. Bring me into that conversation.
Well, I say to them, your job is not to be a martyr for the country. Your job is to make what you think is the best decision for you and your organization. The job of public policy is to make Canada attractive. So I'm not suggesting anyone be a martyr. You do what you think is right. But I advocate for the policies that make Canada more fertile, because huge amounts of prosperity and money, and you see it yourself in people, they leave the country because they're tired of the pokes in the eye. And what the Trudeau government did not understand is when you do these aggressive, quote unquote, redistribution things and you shrink the pie, the ones that get hurt the most are actually the most vulnerable. And the inequitability in Canada grew during their time. And so the key is to grow the pie. America does many things wrong, but they're very good at getting rich. And we've got to do that much, much more. And I do think the current government is trying that federally. I think but their education is from a bygone era of a production economy, not quite understanding these intangibles and how the spillovers work and the platform economics. So they're struggling in what they're doing and you can see it's like a laundry list of things. It's aspirational. It's outdated structures so, my advocacy is increase your capacity to understand what you really need to flex to make Canada more attractive. And it's really just taking a page out of the US playbook or this, Southeast Asian playbook for that matter. But, we've had an outdated thinking and a parochial approach and something that's poked successful people in the eye more than supported them, and you get the outcomes you drive for.
When you choose a Raymond James advisor, you're getting more than independent financial management. You're getting access to complete financial guidance under one roof, from tax and estate planning to trust services for generational wealth and strategies for life's key milestones like buying a home, funding your children's education, or preparing for retirement. They bring it together in one financial plan. What also makes Raymond James Advisors unique is their complete independence. With no proprietary product to promote, you will benefit from personalized services, all backed by the strength and resources of Raymond James, a powerhouse with $100 billion in assets and over 520 advisors nationwide. Discover how Raymond James can help you live a life well planned. Visit raymondjames.ca.
You mentioned that Carney and the government do have a slightly more pro-business tone, perhaps. We also have a new AI minister. We have this kind of like a white paper that came out, AI for All. What do you make of some of those changes, the deliberate focus on AI and how we can really leverage it?
I read the document and I said that it lacks expertise, coherence, focus, and leverage. So it reads like a laundry list of money and aspirations. It's kind of like me trying to be a cook, and I keep throwing spices in and exhorting people this is going to taste good, everybody. And somebody says, "Do you know how to cook, Jim?" And because you just can't just throw everything in. And so there's a bit of that. And privacy is supposed to drop today. And again, is that going to be a foreign capture thing, or is it actually going to be something that benefits Canadians economically and non-economically? So I think that's my point, is that and they're not clear on the AI compute. Is this for Canadian companies or non-Canadian companies? The first $240 million went to sovereign compute went to CoreWeave, which is kind of like, here's the new cigarette machines for the school health program. It's counterproductive, and we can't afford to do that. Now, I do think Prime Minister Carney is trying to get resources to Tidewater, and I think they know that that's what pays for the place.
Right.
But that's a Russian economy, oil and minerals, which is fine. But I think Canada has the capacity to participate much more on these value chains for a much higher standard of living, and much more standard sovereign control. And I'm not seeing the expertise and orientation to positioning that. It was a decade of inattention, then a decade of giving it away. Now, obviously, we have to reverse it, and I'm not seeing the reversing structures yet, but it's very technical. It needs a reorientation. It needs expertise. It's not going to be just a bunch of very expert capital allocators. That's necessary, but not sufficient.
There was also some criticism, even the title AI for All, that the focus was very much on fairness. It's an important topic. But there was some criticism that some of the, some Canadian ideology is kind of getting in the way of really deploying our resources properly and really unlocking what we can out of AI. Did you hear any of these criticisms? Did it resonate with you?
Well, I found that it was superficial in that it thinks that with its adoption, you will get prosperity because the way value chains work, yes, AI is going to make money, but who gets the money is always somebody's going to get the 100 billion and somebody's going to get steak knives. And there's nothing in it that really grapples with the sovereign part of the value chains. They just assume it's an article of faith, kind of like we dealt with research funding and FDI. You just spread it and it happens, and it's not. You have to corral it with strategic behavior. So I found that quite outdated and naive. I think they want to upgrade skills. And I've been quite involved in productivity and these reports. Certainly I chaired one for Wabkanu in Manitoba. And in fact, is it that we need more money for AI skills, or is it the fact that our curriculum development structures are way too slow and we do spend lots of money, but we're just not adapting fast enough? And so is the question more money or the adaptation nature and speed of the skills systems that we have? They talk a lot about a compute for health and all that kind of stuff, which is fine, but they didn't deal with a governance layer of who decides how your health data gets used. Is it professors? Is it corporates? And so I thought they missed the most central aspects of how you get value chains, how you ensure democratic accountability, how do you make sure we're sovereign. And it was more a superficial laundry list of aspiration and money. And again, that's the absence of expertise, coherence, focus, and leverage. And then you just give money to a bunch of friends for safety institutes. But you do have to govern this stuff because it hurts people a lot. But again, are you governing it for its economic and non-economic aspects, or are you just strip mined and here I'm just a shell and cheap energy and I'm outside of any aspect of the factor of production? So yeah, and the rest of the world is very strategic on these things. I've not seen it yet. I didn't see it in the defense industrial strategy. How do we do data? How do we control it? How do we control our IP? How do we interrelate with all the standards? NATO has all these very active standard setting things for value chains. We don't play that. We play a 1970s kind, and the people who are doing these decisions are products of that thinking and education. So that's why what I say is updated capacity and a reorientation of approaches, or you're going to get the same outcomes. And yes, I put stark statistic out there because this is what it looks like when you do it unlike successful nation states. So I think you have to make the case. And when it doesn't work, they claim they've done everything great and that it's just a complacent business culture. And if we just get off our lazy butts and open our wallets, the checks would just come flying in. And in fact, it's much more complex and technical and contended than they represent. So either upgrade your skills or bring in people who have proper updated skills.
It really strikes me when I think about AI and Canada's role in AI. I mean, we have the so-called godfather of AI here, Geoffrey Hinton. We, at some of our labs, you've talked about how we have some of the best research labs, AI research labs in the world here in Canada. I think you've cited one in Edmonton. But ultimately, the kind of economic value has been accruing elsewhere.
They gave it all away.
So, I mean, Why? What was the big lapse in forethought there?
Well, it's not the professor's decision. It's not, their job is not to make public policy decisions. Their job is to do what they think narrowly is best there. It's like you drive your car to the speed limit. You don't set the speed limit, you drive to the speed limit.
Right.
And so your job is not to say, I think this is safer and this is non-safe. I mean, obviously within sort of aspects of environment, you could consider it. But there was absolutely no public policy that said, we got to keep this here. And there's extensive amounts of fundamental AI IP that was created in Edmonton, Montreal, and Toronto. It was absolutely squandered away. And what do? They give those people responsibility for commercialization in this AI strategy. They have no experience in commercialization. Right. They squandered the 30 years of it. And that's why I said they're doing this plan without a fundamental reconsideration of what worked and did not work over the past 10 years. It's just Einstein's definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different outcome. So why does it work out like that? Because it was outdated thinking in a changed world, not understanding that owning the ideas is not the same as creating them. And owning them is extremely strategic economically and non-economically. But the same thing happened, like, Ozempic was invented by Professor Drucker at U of T. A lot of the mRNA was done at UBC. The Tesla battery technology was in Dalhousie, much the Huawei technology at University of Waterloo. Very fundamental stuff, taxpayer funded. They get research money, they get labs, they get SR&ED credits. And we do global philanthropy. And my view is that we should have that prosperity and security here at home. And I say with our entrepreneurs, imagine what they could do with the wind at their back instead of their face. So yeah, if you love something, you fight for it. I love Canada. You do too. And we all do. And I think it's been a fundamental public policy failure. The world has changed in the last 30 years in a degree and rapidity unprecedented in mankind, and absolutely nothing in the policy capacity and thinking has changed in Canada. And we've eroded because of it. And I point it out, but I also point out solutions, and I fund solutions, and I engage. So I don't just, and I'm, 2/3 of my day is growing tech in Canada and US too. So it's not like I'm not putting my time and capability and success and money where I'm articulating. But yeah, I call it out. But I think it needs to be, because they gaslight people and they make it feel like it's their fault.
Yeah, there's no shortage of good ideas here. That's for sure. No shortage of good ideas in Canada.
Yeah.
Support for this podcast is provided by Hamilton ETFs. My mission with this show is simple: give everyday investors access to institutional quality insights. It's a mission shared by our supporter, Hamilton ETFs. For the past decade, Hamilton has focused on taking sophisticated investment ideas and turning them into ETFs that are simple, transparent, and easy for Canadians to own. Now today, Hamilton is Canada's largest independent ETF provider with more than $17 billion in assets under management. They've built a reputation for innovation across both growth and income. From the Hamilton Champions lineup of growth-focused ETFs to their yield maximizer strategies designed to generate attractive monthly income. In this episode, we're asking whether Canada can meet the moment. Hamilton ETFs has spent the past decade doing exactly that: challenging convention, developing new investment solutions, and making sophisticated strategies more accessible to everyday investors.
I'm curious, when I think about this pattern, you mentioned the chemical that, created Ozempic or AI's foundations.
Yeah.
I wonder if, when you reflect on BlackBerry's story, where you guys had this incredible product, incredible idea, ultimately, eventually, the economic value ended up being accrued south of the border. Does this AI feel like a repeat of that?
No,
in a sense?
not at all. No,
okay.
Rin's issue was a strategic issue. What happened was, and I resigned, we'd finished a $20 billion year, and I'd finished a $5.2 billion quarter. And I'd spent a year and a half developing an open services model, because BBM, we had more profits at the time than Facebook had revenue. Mm-hmm. And we were planned to launch it in the Mobile World Congress in Barcelona, and Mike and the new CEO at the board just canceled it without talking to me to keep it proprietary to our devices. And I said, I think you've killed the company. And I resigned from the board and sold my shares. That's a strategic decision by the company. So that was a strategic. And they were very confident. They did Super Bowl ads and all that and felt great. And I didn't say anything, but it didn't work. And in hindsight, I mean, we should have been, the carriers were carrying us as a social media on your SMS. Nobody disputes that now that was the necessary move, but that was the fork in the road at the time. And that was a strategic decision, but the board backed Mike and Thorsten, and that's their prerogative. And it didn't work.
I do want to get your kind of galaxy brain on AI a little bit, if I may. Given you are kind of, a tech visionary, I would love to know, there have been so many grim prognostications about job loss as a result of AI. Where's your head on that? Do you think there's going to be, mass unemployment as AI expands?
I read prodigiously every day, and I'm just having a lot of trouble trying to figure this out. For sure, it's consequential in the employment structures. For sure, it's got strategic elements to it. It's security and economics. So it leads to strategic behavior on big nation states. So, and I think it's got tremendous intergenerational inequity, increasing returns to scale to who controls the factor productivity, and just disintermediation of the others. So I do think we need, and I fund a lot of research for young scholars in these realms, lots of scholarships and institutes that do that at the graduate school and at CG and all that. So young people have to architect their future. I think they should have a bigger voice in this. They're not happy about it. And I think they're unhappy for good reasons. And I think they've been sold short through the nature of these legal frameworks that makes people trillionaires and graduate degrees drive Uber taxis. We have to, as a nation, and also can there be collective efforts globally? It's hard because it's strategic behavior, win-loss. Not everyone's on the same page of norms. You got two hegemons that are really bumping it up. It's a hard problem. So I think it's going to get bumpier before it gets better. I think for sure what it's going to do to the job market and social upheaval is consequential. I think strategic behavior and sovereignty are big things. You've seen with the Anthropic pulling of its access, or the mythos. So it's become a strategic lever into geopolitics. These are hard files. I just came from a board meeting on this, and I think you just have to know you're going through a foggy sea and do your best, try not to hit the rocks, and stay for clear seas. But it's tough. And we need to really, as a nation, think much more strategically about this. And then quite frankly, what are the hegemons going to sort of do with all the stuff that's going on? And it's a really, but it's super powerful for those that embrace it. And in my companies, we really embrace it, and it turbocharges aspects of your business, and both in terms of the revenue side, but in the code development side. So it's complex for us.
It's complex. And I mean, you mentioned the intergenerational challenges. I think about the group that's perhaps the most vocally opposed. I'm picking up that it's the youngsters, it's the Gen Z, it's the Gen Alpha. And that is kind of a contrast to the smartphone era, which was so, I felt, experienced, wholeheartedly embraced by the younger generations. There was certainly resistance to smartphones becoming so prominent in our lives. What kind of lessons can we learn from that experience? They're
fundamentally different forces. When we were doing RIM and when we were going to go cross-platform on the different devices, which was the whole thing I just mentioned a minute ago, it was a privacy protecting model, not an ad supported model. So, and then these things migrated to AI to control your behavior and change your mood states and polarize and mental health and all that kind of stuff. And then now AI is supersizing that. So it's got negative spillovers to communities and individuals, and it's monopolizing a factor of production and then just turning you into a gig worker, disenfranchised economically. So I think what's different is the effects are different. It's not a theoretical thing. It's not sort of, it's a true lived effect for people that they're just saying, my paycheck's weaker, my costs are higher, my insecurity is higher, the hits, the adverse spillovers of these things are really not good, malevolent, mental health and stuff like that. And so it's the lived experience, and they know it, and they see that it's eaten up entry-level jobs. And it's great if you're established because it's a tool to leverage, but then how do you get to be somebody who's established to leverage the tool if all the intern things are being squeezed away? So yeah, again, I think my view, and I don't say this a lot, but I think as a country, we have to reimagine Canada in many respects, because the fundamental assumptions of the country have changed in the reality of the world. And a lot of them were quite predictable. Some of them, the degree and intensity is a bit surprising, but...
Which were surprising in their intensity to you?
Well, the nature of AI as a machine human capital to this. I think the US has done strategic behavior all my career, but I didn't foresee them cranking it up this aggressive and this transparently brutish in the past year and a bit. So I think those, it's been this way, it's just been cranked up. But the thing is, we didn't prepare for any of these things. There was a kind of, it's a rules-based order, everybody's in the same boat, it's a shared destiny, everything's good. And the world exploits vulnerability and leverages it. But there was never an understanding that it's a leverage-based world. So, but if you've been in global business, you see leverage all day, every day. It's not personal. They just think the money's better in their pocket than yours. And so this has been a hard awakening for Canada. So I've said in Trump, maybe it's a blessing. It was a hard enough hit to actually wake them out of the sentimental and naive conception of the world. But what are we going to do about it now is the big question.
For Canadians, if a company decides to move to the US, move elsewhere, the ideas maybe germinated here. Is that a Canadian success story, or should we consider that a failure if they decided to leave?
It's not a failure. It's a loss.
It's a loss.
It's not a success. It's a loss because the prosperity and security accrues elsewhere. So we're a global philanthropist. We give it away. So, yeah.
That's a really funny way of framing it.
Yeah. It's deeply, And so when they found that they drove away all these entrepreneurs, the capital gains, which was really just needless poke in the eye and giving money to foreign firms, but driving away our firms, eventually you lose your prosperity base. And now we're sitting there going, oh my God, what do we do to pay for this country? And so they're saying, pump more oil because we got to pay for this country because it's a beautiful country, but it needs money to pay for, healthcare, public safety, education, ... everything we care about.
A lot of your presentations, you talk about kind of how Canada has been in what you describe as a structural decline for about 4 decades or so.
Yes.
And, in this conversation, you've had some kind of optimistic points, some pessimistic points. You have investments all over the world.
Yes.
But why focus so much on cultivating and helping Canada's, innovation economy? What's in it for you?
Well, I mean, it's deeply meaningful. If you care about something, you fight for it. And I don't have a take my money and cut kind of attitude, but I have a very, very rich life. It's crazy interesting in my philanthropy and my arts and culture things, my public policy, and of course my businesses in Europe and in US. So I think to just take my money and leave the country would be letting a lot of good people down. That I know I have a job of air cover and resourcing. And if I just said you're on your own, then the bullies win. And I have a problem with bullies. I think I don't like them. I don't like gaslighting, which is a form of bullying. And so there's a tremendous number of good people. There's a tremendous potential in the country. And there's no way I would do anything. I'm outlasting all the bullies. And they're learning that, teach people how to treat you. So I think, Bob Dylan, mortal words, the times they are changing. They're starting to wake up to these things. 20 years late, but I'll take it. And the good people will be given the place at the table they should have. And if I've played a role in advocating for them and creating air cover and resourcing them, well, that's a life well lived.
Jim, thank you so much for your time today.
Pleasure's mine.
I really appreciate it. Thank you.